Cyberpunk 2077 is a fantastic setting for a range of sleek and futuristic-looking vehicles, from flying cars and taxis mainly reserved for the Corpo elite to outlandishly tuned rides which wouldn't look out of place in Mad Max. One vehicle type which really stands out for their excellent handling and versatility in getting around Night City, however, is motorcycles. In fact, despite having half as many wheels as a car, I found myself staying upright more of the time riding one of these things than I ever do in my Mercmobile Caliburn. But of course, not all bikes are created equal, and in this video I'll be breaking down each of the 6 in order to decide which is best. And I won't be just assessing the overall driving experience either, especially since some of these are just reskins of one another. Therefore, the means by which we acquire them, as well as the overall aesthetic, is also going to play a big part. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off at number 6, meet the Brennan Apollo, an off-roader bike designed with practicality prioritised over looks. These can be found in and around the roads of Night City, though the one we get to keep is being sold by Sebastian Ibarra in Vista del Rey for 30,000 eddies, which to be fair is the cheapest of the 3 purchasable bikes. In spite of the practical focus, I don't actually mind the design of this one. Granted, it's still my least favourite even aesthetically, though as an off-road bike I didn't really expect it to look this clean. In fact, I kind of wish that Cyberpunk had incorporated at least one bike with rusty, dust-ridden bodywork. Instead, they all feel a bit like premium products, which isn't bad per se, it's just not very varied. We do have a nice box on the back wherein we can stash things, though bear in mind this is a feature of all the bikes, box or not. I can see the context that they're going for though. This is a long-distance bike, which canonically has an oversized fuel tank to cover long distances. Again though, running out of fuel is either cut content or was seen to be a fun killer. At least, I think. I don't actually know if anyone's ever driven long enough to run out of fuel. Maybe there's a challenge video there, or a live stream idea, which is, by the way, something I haven't got around to incorporating into the channel yet, but something I'd definitely be interested in doing. Base stats for this thing are 94 horsepower, with a top speed of 138 miles per hour, and literally, it will clock you out upon reaching that speed, which is a shame because the bike feels like it could go faster. There's nothing indicating to me that the vehicle is particularly struggling at this point. That could potentially be a good immersion mod, maybe struggling vehicle sounds if it doesn't already exist. Overall, this bike was just shaping up to have nothing particularly good going for it. But then, I took it off-road. You see, this is where you're going to thrive with this bike. It can't possibly hold a candle to others on the roads, but get onto uneven terrain and it really starts to shine, with the suspension keeping the thing steady across all the ups and downs. Overall though, I'd say to hold on to your 30,000 eddies until that money means nothing to you, since there's a version of this bike coming up which you don't have to pay for. Up next, we have the Arch Nazare, that being the yellow model, which you can purchase from Wakako up in Norfolk for a rather steep 71,000 eddies. This is the most expensive bike on the list by quite a margin, and considering you get just as good an alternative for free, I imagine this will be pushed to the back of the queue on most people's priority list. Equally, I can't deny that I am a big fan of the yellow, and on a purely aesthetic basis, this would probably be second or third for me, though it's mostly dragged down by the price point. Just some background context here. In the world of 2077, which is rife with corporate divide, where rich businessmen can effectively live forever, maybe, there is a clear fear among the elite for preserving one's own life. This is why so many of the Corpo vehicles are heavily armoured or simply fly above the dangers of Night City. Motorcycles though, they are for the carefree. Nomadic solos, unbound from the fear of one's own mortality, liberated to live each day as though it were their last, which it very well might be, but they're going out on their own terms, and they're not afraid to choose freedom over a suffocating level of security. Ironically, however, this bike was previously owned by a corpo who purchased it to impress his subordinates. However, being entirely unfamiliar with the sheer speed and power behind such a vehicle, he broke too hard, flew from the seat and, well, you can probably guess the rest. Suffice it to say, this bike is back on the market and ours for the taking. It handles okay, not amazing 100% of the time as the previous owner found out, but good enough to get around, with a whopping 170 horsepower and a neat top speed of 178 miles per hour. Again, you can't really surpass this speed, though I might have reached 179 for a split second. Overall, for the speed, it's also comfortably bouncy and versatile, with stopping power, which is possibly better than it ought to be. Just be careful not to clip into railings like I did here, as I literally couldn't get off after this and had to reload a previous game. Perfectly fixed game with 0 bugs and glitches, they said. The superior Apollo variant, in my opinion, is the one we acquire for free at the end of the main quest Life During Wartime with Pan Am. The fact that we can get this one essentially for doing nothing extra is a nice plus in my eyes, allowing us to try this vehicle automatically. Now of course, this bike has a sad story, as it once belonged to Pan Am's friend Scorpion, who, if it wasn't obvious, was also a member of the Aldecaldos. I mentioned before about wanting a more run-down looking bike for off-road, and whilst this one still looks pretty clean, the graffiti-esque paint is simply going to be the closest thing we'll get. I don't know, maybe they invented anti-rust, anti-dust material by 2077. Now, in literal terms, this is simply a reskin of the other Apollo, and thus shares the exact same stats. But contextually, all boxes have been removed in order to improve speed. Honestly, would it have been so hard for CDPR to just add a couple miles per hour onto this one to account for that? Oh well, maybe there's a mod for it. But as it stands, this bike shares the same 94 horsepower and top speed of 138 miles per hour. I did go off-roading with this one a fair bit more though, and did slightly more daring jumps like this one across the Aldecaldo camp. Suffice to say, if you're spending a lot of time in the Badlands, traversing in this bike, despite not being the fastest exactly, will get you there quicker due to the lack of mishaps. The Kusanagi CT-3X is just about the fastest bike on this list, though doesn't exactly come cheap. As a combined effort between the companies Yaiba and Arasaka, it's clear that there's a lot of futuristic high-tech powering this thing. It is insanely sleek and powerful, with the shape almost being like a bullet, the seat carving out an otherwise perfect piece of symmetry. If we look here at presumably the fuel cap, or possibly charging point, there is a pretty big radioactive symbol. Now, I'm pretty sure most of the vehicles in this world are powered either electrically or with a petrol alternative known as QH2.
Wait a minute, are you telling me that this sucker is nuclear?
Well, Marty, maybe they finally figured out a Mr. Fusion machine, just 62 years after 2015. It's also based, so I'm told by you guys, on the bike from the movie Akira, a film which I haven't seen yet, but I'm sure is a cool Easter egg for many of you. This one will set you back 58,000 eddies, for which you get 183 horsepower and a top speed of 181 miles per hour, a mere 3 more than the Arch. Though bear in mind, this is cheaper than the paid-for Nazare, which is partly why it ranks higher as far as I'm concerned. This model first came out on the market in 2068, which is interesting because during Johnny's flashback sequences, we can see a young rogue riding on one, obviously years before they were invented. Yet another example of the inaccurate memory sequences of Johnny's engram. Overall, this handles pretty much as well as the others, but gains the upper hand in speed when driving along main roads. If you want the surrounding urban beauty of this city to slip past you like a light show, whilst your body constantly looks under the anime Sandevistan effect, then this is the bike for you. After we get paid for the Sandra Dorset gig, Jackie decides to spend his cut on a very nice looking Arch motorcycle, and much like his pistols, we eventually inherit it after his tragic demise. The great thing about this bike, however, is that regardless of where we send Jackie's body, we will inevitably end up with the bike. This makes it not only free, but free to all. Equally, if we're playing a Nomad, we can open up this dialogue option just before the Maelstrom gig at all foods. Since Nomads are notoriously the carefree type to ride motorcycles, a Nomad V with 6 tech points will be able to suggest some modifications to Jackie's bike, resulting in us receiving Jackie's tuned Arch with extra tailpipes, statistically identical but with a small visual difference. Again, these are all just reskins of the same Arch bike, annoyingly, with 170 horsepower and 178 miles per hour being its base stats. Interesting side note on the Arch bikes, by the way, Arch motorcycles are actually a genuine company started back in 2011 by Gard Hollinger and Keanu Reeves. Therefore, not only is this a nice acting gig for Keanu, but he's also got product placement pretty much everywhere. The Nazare is based on their real-life Arch Method 143 model, with obvious futuristic cyberpunk tweaks. Ultimately though, I regard the look of this bike as one of the nicest, with a design which makes it appear sturdy and powerful. Can we go flying off it just like the others? Of course we can. And on that terrible disappointment, it's on to number 1. The only bike in the game with a specific quest tied to it, the Arch Nazare Itsumade model is acquired after completing the Highwayman, which you can begin by coming over here to this garage behind the Ripidot Clinic in Rancho Coronado. This quest is an invitation into love, loss, and betrayal, wherein the bike's former owner, Josie Alcazar, is betrayed by her boyfriend and murdered by Tiger Claws after stealing their bike. In tracking down and solving the mystery, we can locate the secret garage where this bike is hidden, with the code to get inside being 0214. After the couple's anniversary, February 14th. Now, I just love the design of this bike, which is weird because I normally hate these more chrome-based colours on vehicles. I remember a friend once proudly displaying his garage of chrome vehicles in GTA 5 whilst I cried myself to sleep that night thinking about how those beautiful cars had been utterly ruined. But I guess in the fully chromed out world of Cyberpunk 2077, something this outlandish is what you need to stand out. Only in a good way this time. When looking at the face on the front of this thing, I immediately thought of the bikes in that scene from the Scooby-Doo movie. Then when I went to check back on this, I realised that much like Johnny Silverhand, my memories were lying to me as well. This bike is way cooler, and something which I think the Book of Boba Fett could take notes from. Seriously guys, of all the planets to introduce Cyberpunk characters, you thought Tatooine was the most appropriate. With the same stats as all the other arches, what pushes this one into first place for me therefore is the design. I feel like a genuine cyberpunk when driving this thing around Night City, and the revolving neon text on the wheels, to name but one feature, leans into that glowy over-the-top aesthetic really well. I also just found bikes in general so much better for maneuvering around the tighter corners and alleyways of Night City. In the past, I've mostly resorted to the Caliburn to get myself from A to B, though I think that might change now, having finally taken the time to give all the bikes more of a proper go. They're also way easier to maneuver in first person as well, though still not the easiest. But even just the cool aesthetic of the horns on the front of the dashboard makes this one stand out, placing it at the top of my list. The main thing making this video has made me realise though is just how much I can't wait for vehicle combat to become a thing. Driving around Night City was fun at first, but after a while I just got pretty bored, and it made me realise simply how important a good police chase is to spicing up our time driving vehicles. But what do you think? Do you enjoy driving aimlessly around Night City and breathing in the urban sights, or do you just jump from point A to point B as quickly as possible? More importantly, let me know your favourite motorcycle in Cyberpunk 2077 and why. I do aim to cover cars at some point, though that may span multiple videos, as there's about 37 of them. So if you want those videos to come faster, then let me know you enjoyed this one by hitting those thumbs up and subscribe buttons. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Bram, and I'll see you soon in another video.